Judge. Joseph Forrest Crater just disappeared. He walked out into a New York City night in August of 1930. Then he was gone, no trace, nothing. It was like he just stepped off the face of the earth. And people have been wondering ever since what happened to him. Was he murdered? Did he run away? That's the big question. It's a story that still hangs in the air, a real head-scratcher. New York in 1930 was a wild place. Prohibition was in full swing. Gangsters were everywhere. Speakeasies lined the streets. Money was being made and lost fast. And politics? Well, that was often a messy business, with Tammany Hall holding a lot of power. The judges like Crater were right in the middle of it all. They saw a lot, they knew a lot. And sometimes knowing too much could get you into trouble. Crater was a Supreme Court justice. A big deal. He was smart, he was ambitious, he was good looking. He had a wife, Stella, and a nice life. He was moving up. He had just been appointed to the bench. Things were looking good for him. Or so it seemed from the outside, but then that night, August 6th, 1930, he had spent the summer with his wife in Maine. He came back to New York for a few days. He was supposed to go back to Maine to pick her up, but he never did. His last day started pretty normally. He had lunch with a lawyer friend, William Klein, and a showgirl, Sally Lou Ritz. People often call her his mistress, and she probably was. After lunch, he went back to his apartment, then to his office. This is where things get a bit strange. He spent a few hours there. He went through a lot of paper. He put some documents and maybe some cash into a briefcase. He told his secretary he was taking the rest of the day off. He told her to hold his mail. He said he was going to Maine, but he said it in a way that seemed a little off, like he was maybe not telling the whole truth. Then he went back to his apartment. He changed into a brown suit. That's what people remember him wearing. A brown suit, a Panama hat, and glasses. He went out again. He had dinner at a restaurant called Billy Haas's Chop House on West 45th Street. He was with the same two people he'd had lunch with, Klein and Ritz. They ate dinner. They talked. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Around 9:15 p.m., Crater stood up. He said he was going to a show, or maybe he said he was going for a walk. The accounts vary. He said he would see them later. He walked out of the restaurant, he hailed a taxi, and that was it. That was the last confirmed sighting of Judge Joseph Forrest Crater. He just vanished into the New York night. His wife, Stella, was still in Maine. She didn't hear from him. A few days passed, then a week. She started to get worried, but she didn't call the police right away. This is one of the things that makes people wonder. Why the delay? She waited 3 weeks. 3 long weeks. Then she came back to New York. She checked their apartment. Nothing. No sign of him. It was September 3rd when she finally reported him missing. And when she did, it was big news. The police were suddenly involved. The press went wild. A Supreme Court justice just gone? It was unheard of. He became the missingest man in New York. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a theory. The police started their investigation, but they were already weeks behind. Any trail would have been cold. So, let's look at the first big theory. Did Judge Crater just flee? Did he run away? This is a popular idea. People stage their disappearances. They start new lives. Could he have done that? Well, there are some things that make you think it's... First, the money. He took money out of his bank account before he disappeared. Not a huge sum, but enough to get by for a while, and the papers he took from his office. What were those papers? Were they important, incriminating, or just things he needed for a new life? Nobody knows for sure. Then there's his personal life. Crater was known to be a ladies' man. He had affairs. Sally Lou Ritz was one. Another woman named Betty Lee said she was also involved with him. Could he have gotten himself into a messy situation? Maybe a blackmail scheme. Or maybe he just wanted to escape the complications of his private life. A judge with a mistress living a double life. In that era, a scandal like that could ruin a career. Maybe he just wanted to get away from it all. And the timing is interesting too. There were whispers of a grand jury investigation. An investigation into judicial corruption, into Tammany Hall's influence. Crater was a political appointee. He was connected. Did he know something was coming down the pipeline? Was he afraid of being caught up in it? Of being exposed? Maybe he figured it was better to disappear than face public disgrace, or even jail time. There were also a lot of supposed sightings of him. People thought they saw him in Europe, in Canada, in Mexico, in Cuba. But none of these sightings were ever confirmed. They were always vague, always unverified, just rumors floating around. If he did run away, he did a really good job of hiding. He changed his name, maybe his appearance. He started fresh somewhere. But then, if he ran away, why? He had a good job, a lot of status, a comfortable life. Would he really give all of that up? Just disappear and never look back? It seems like a drastic step. And for what? A life on the run? A life in hiding? It doesn't quite fit with the image of an ambitious man like Crater. He liked the spotlight, the power. It would be hard to imagine him living a quiet, anonymous life somewhere. And why wouldn't he ever contact his wife or anyone, even years later when the heat was off? It's a tough sell. Now, let's talk about the other big theory, the one that says he was murdered. This is the more dramatic, and maybe to some people more believable explanation. New York in the 1930s was a dangerous place. People disappeared, especially people who might have known too much. Crater was a judge. He would have been involved in a lot of cases. Some of them probably touched on organized crime, on the mob, on the rackets that were thriving during Prohibition. Did he make an enemy? Did he rule against the wrong person? Did he refuse a bribe? Or maybe he took one and then something went wrong. There's the idea that he knew too much about political corruption. Tammany Hall was powerful. They controlled a lot of things. Judicial appointments, for example. Crater's appointment had some question marks around it. There were rumors he might have paid for his judgeship if he knew where the bodies were buried, so to speak. Then he could have been a liability. Someone might have wanted to silence him permanently. The way he disappeared is also a point for the murder theory. It was so complete, so sudden. No body, no trace, nothing. It's like he fell through a trapdoor. That kind of perfect disappearance often suggests a professional job, not someone just running off and hoping for the best. If he was murdered, whoever did it knew what they were doing. They cleaned up everything. There were later confessions, too. Years later, in 1950, a woman named Stella Ferrucci, who was the maid for Crater's wife, Stella, wrote a letter. She said that Stella Crater told her on her deathbed that Crater had been murdered. The maid claimed Stella said Crater was killed by two men named Vanny and Frank. She said Crater was hit over the head, his body put in a box, and dumped in the ocean. This was a bombshell, but it came out 20 years after the fact, and it was just one woman's word. Stella Crater herself had died by then, so she couldn't confirm or deny it. Another story came from a gangster named Abe Rellis. He was a hitman for Murder, Inc. He was cooperating with the police in 1940. He told them he heard that Crater had been murdered. Rellis was talking about other things, giving information, and this was just a side note. He didn't have direct knowledge, but it fit with the idea that the mob was involved. And there's a story from a woman named Ann Story, who was allegedly Crater's mistress at some point. She told the police that Crater had picked up a large sum of money just before he vanished. Money that was supposedly for a bribe, and she said he mentioned meeting someone dangerous. She thought he was going to be double-crossed. The murder theory certainly fits the context of the time. Gangsters were bold. Politicians were often corrupt. It wasn't hard to imagine someone with Crater's connections getting caught up in something ugly. But the biggest problem with the murder theory is still the lack of a body. If he was murdered, where is he? The ocean is vast, yes, but no wreckage, no clothes, no identifying marks ever showed up. It's a very clean disappearance for a murder. Usually, eventually, something turns up, even years later, but not with Crater. So we have these two big theories, and no solid proof for either one. Let's think about Stella Crater, his wife. Her behavior was always a little odd, waiting 3 weeks to report him missing. And then once she did, she seemed to give conflicting stories. Or she held back information. Some people thought she might have known more than she let on. Did she know he ran away? Was she covering for him? Or did she know he was murdered and was afraid to say anything? It's impossible to know. She was certainly put in a terrible position. Her husband just vanished. Imagine that, and what about his friends, like William Klein and Sally Lou Ritz, who he had dinner with that last night? Did they know anything? They seemed to cooperate with the police. They said he was in good spirits. But sometimes people say that to throw off suspicion. Were they truly innocent? Or were they somehow involved, or at least knew what was going to happen? There's no evidence to suggest they were directly involved in anything nefarious, but the simple fact is, they were the last confirmed people to see him before he stepped into that taxi. The police investigation itself was a mess. It started late, it was under huge public pressure. They chased down hundreds of leads, all those supposed sightings, all those rumors. They spent years on it, but they never got anywhere. It was a cold case from the start, really. They even tried to drain a lake once, based on a tip, but found nothing. They interviewed countless people. They built up files and files of information, but nothing concrete ever came out of it. The file on Judge Crater grew to be massive, filled with dead ends. Over the decades, the mystery of Judge Crater just faded in and out of the public consciousness. Every now and then, a new book would come out, or a new theory would emerge. A deathbed confession, an old man claiming to have witnessed something, but none of it ever led to a real breakthrough. In 1969, nearly 40 years after he vanished, Judge Crater was officially declared legally dead. It was a formality. He had been gone for too long. His case was closed, but the mystery? That never closed. It's still wide open. So, where do we stand? Did he flee or was he murdered? If he fled, he left behind a life of power and status. He gave up everything. For what? To live a quiet life of anonymity? It just seems out of character for an ambitious man like him. And to do it so perfectly, never to be seen or heard from again, is a remarkable feat. It's possible, sure. People do strange things. They get desperate. They crave a new start. But the lack of any real evidence of him living elsewhere, no pension claims, no new identity papers ever found, makes it hard to swallow completely. If he was murdered, it was a perfectly executed crime. No body, no weapon, no crime scene. No real evidence pointing to who did it or why. Just rumors and whispers. And those deathbed confessions, while dramatic, are hard to verify decades later. But the idea that he knew too much, that he was caught up in the dark underbelly of Prohibition era New York, that feels right. It feels like the kind of story that would happen in that time and place. A man with secrets suddenly silenced. It's tempting to lean towards the murder theory. The completeness of the disappearance, the era, the whispers of corruption. It all points to something dark, something final. It feels more in line with a professional job than a hurried escape. But without a body, without a single piece of hard evidence, it's all just speculation. We don't know, and that's the frustrating, captivating thing about the Judge Crater case. It remains a true enigma. He walked out into a bustling New York City night. A night filled with noise, with life, with secrets. He was wearing a brown suit, a Panama hat. He hailed a cab, and he was swallowed whole by the city. By the night, he simply disappeared, and he never came back. The missingest man in New York remains just that, missing, and his story continues to haunt us, a reminder that sometimes, even in the brightest of lights, people can just vanish without a trace. It's a classic mystery, and it's probably one that will never be solved.